Actually, a great crowd. But this material, we have a lot of interest. In fact, I won't play the drama game. We're leading up to where these films are going to be turned into a DVD. Okay?
Ooh.
But it's still, that part's still in the works. What you're going to see tonight is the raw films. Okay? This is what we got from Dr. B.W. Travis's son in Bluffton, and what we found here, or uncovered here in the museum. I guess I got to tell something about that. There's only one way to tell this story. It goes back 40 years. There was a hobby shop on Cool Road, north of Lima, and they had these VHS tapes. They had these VHS tapes available. One of Dr. Travis's films, these very same films, but it was a copy of a copy of a copy. But I come up out of my seat when I saw some of the material on this film, and most of you will probably recognize why I came up out of the seat, okay? So I went to the house. I found the house in Bluffton. Daughter was living there. She was not very helpful, and I couldn't find my way to the films. She said her brother had them, and that was it. She wouldn't reveal anything any further. Took 30 years later, Denny Morrison was in the same high school class as his son David. And then of course that also led to his classmates. Yeah, Fred Rudaball. And I want to make a special mention. This is only because of Dennis's involvement and him coming out to help at Lincoln Park. He had been active here at the museum, but every once in a while we have an open house out at Lincoln Park. And Denny came out there, and then in the course of this, he mentioned this, and all of a sudden I took 2 plus 2, and 40 years ago, and I said, hey. And he said, oh, I went to high school with him. So in any case, he rounded up, and they relayed it through Fred and Denny, and wound up in my hands here about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. I had conversations with the son David, how he wanted to see him used. He wanted to see him shared so people could see him. It wasn't really to make money per se, it was to make sure they got out there and they were preserved. So that's how that come up. And then it wasn't 2 weeks later, son David died. By then we had the films, and at the very end I'll bring up the story on the DVD that's in process, right? And I'll do it in the first part in case any of you feel compelled that you have to leave later. The DVD that's going to come out of all this is it's a joint project. The museum's going to get 50% of any net proceeds. The John Keller Fund, which takes care of the equipment at Lincoln Park, will get 25%, and then the Fort Wayne Rear Historical Society will get 25%. Fort Wayne brings to the table the marketing. We've got a whiz, marketing, advertising, and we also have an online store. And the museum doesn't have that, okay? They could sell them over the counter, and that will happen, but this is all set up that way. So, and we've got everything done, all the transfers to digital, all completed. It's all been paid for out of other people's pockets. So none of that's going to come out of the till. All we're going to have is going to be the reproduction cost and the mailing cost. And so hopefully there will be some net left. But the point is not the money, the point is this material survives. I might as well go ahead and tell the story about the museum footage. When I got done with this, the B.W. Travis films total 36 minutes. Well, that's not enough for DVD, okay? You need something that's an hour or more. You need some more material in there. So, light bulb went on. I remember one time there was some railroad films here, Locomotive films here at the museum. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Christine, but the museum never knew how to present this so they could, first off, distribute it and for the record, and also to make some money off of it. Otherwise, it'd be out in the public domain, and you know, there'd be, and the museum's got to keep the lights on, they got staff to pay, and other projects to carry out, including a massive heat and air conditioning system, which is, how big is that, Christine?
The project?
Yeah.
2.3 million.
2.3 million, okay. So that leads me to my other side point. There's a red box here at the back. That's for the John Keller Fund, Lincoln Park Road exhibit. And also the museum has a donation box right there by the front door. You walk right by it to get in there. So that's some of how that's going to work. We've got, like I said, the transfers are all done. So we're leading up. In fact, I'm supposed to talk to Rich Melvin, who is the producer. And he was a senior engineer on the nickel plate 765 out of Fort Wayne for 15 years, 20 years. So he still has his equipment, and he still does some movie work. So we're going to do that. Move this along. Okay. Okay, our first subject in the films are going to be Dr. B.W. Travis from Bluffton. Long since gone. I got to meet him once or twice, but I was a kid. You know, as a teenage kid, I was in awe. You know, this guy was a doctor, a surgeon, and he was an associate of John Keller's, and so that was, I was polite. I got to meet him, and that was it. Okay. Nothing further than that. He also would make some trips to the Mayo Clinic at Rochester, Minnesota. So that's going to come into these films also. And at the very beginning, there is 6 or 8 timetables that Dr. Travis shows to the viewers, and every one of those is represented in the movie films. So, Hannah?
Just press the space bar.
Okay.
Just press it one more time, and then it will go.
This is all his headers that he created. So every one of these railroads is represented in these films. And off we go. This is rare streamlined stuff. The Hudsons were the famous ones that were bigger passenger engines, but they also streamlined a small number of other engines. Heavyweight, the older heavyweight cars have been modernized and taken advanced. I think it's very rare for footage of these to exist. Now, these are only 8mm. They're not perfect, okay? But that's all that exists. Okay, Dunkirk's east of here. To me, the staggering part is the lack of crowd control. Everybody's just wandering around. Well,
That was big news.
can anybody here identify what direction this is in Dunkirk? I can't come up with a correlation. What remains today?
I think it's east. Going east. Or west.
I'm going to look it up, but I think it's probably a K4 class passenger locomotive. We'll see another 1 or 2 wrecks in the film. I mean, they really spilled to do this. And that was a crossing diamond. Don't worry, we'll get something moving here in a minute. Here we go. I don't know what the occasion was to be down in Kentucky, but you got some film of the early Malley locomotives. And they must have had, CNO must have had a couple hundred of these just for coal. Just for gathering coal in the branches and bringing it up to the main terminals. We're at 2662 locomotives. There's one of these runs in Cumberland, Maryland, starting next month.
Not Allegheny?
No,
Okay.
no, that's later.
Compound, all right.
You know, this will be the main line. They're between Cincinnati and Huntington. Ashland also goes through Ashland. Does it sound okay? Can everybody hear in the back?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, you know, once they've got them on the main line, they ran them as 160 car trains. And even with the smaller size hopper cars, that's still a mountain goal. Doubleheader, Ohio River in the background. CNO, of course, is on the south side of the Ohio River. Refrigerator, that white refrigerator, get a load of this caboose out of it. Okay, we're back on another medical trip. This is not the finest streamlining job in the country, but they fixed a few others up this way. And it's really not so appealing directly for it. It was like all sorts of copycats. Sometimes they do things well, and other times it's not quite ideal. And that's a mail car there at first. Back in Fort Tuckers. The first was a mail car. And off it goes out the country. This is one of the high horsepower passenger locomotives, which they would run over 100 mile an hour every day. Every day. Run about Chicago up to Milwaukee and west. And these were not built in Lima, okay? This is Chicago Northwestern also. Looks like commuter trains to me. You'll see more than one of these come in. Okay, Blumpton, Ohio, brand new CNO Allegheny locomotive. They backed them all the way to Fostoria. Brand new. Now, this was the second order, so this was, I think, 1942. Yeah, it was.
That's because the turntable Lima wouldn't turn it.
Right. The first one, the 1600, was finished either the day before or day after Pearl Harbor. And they ran it nose first down to St. Mary's, Ohio, turned it on the Y, and all kind of engineers, management people rode along, and it went nose first to Fostoria. All the others, including the Virginia locomotives, were all backed all the way. No train, no caboose. This is nickel plate through Bluffton. You're going to run into it different times. There's a junction with the ACMY Railroad, which used to run east and west. There's a tower up there. Okay, here comes another day, another brand new CNO Allegheny. If you're not aware, I followed this stuff 50 years, and that's the ACMY crossing right there in the tower, and all Allegheny backs up to Astoria. Okay, now we're going to jump off New York Central for just one brief vignette, and then back to another. These are numbered in the 1620s. yet, never have seen any other film or still pictures of these brand new locomotives being delivered to Fostoria. Never. No mention of it. This is the only proof, as far as I know, this is the only proof that that ever happened. And I don't know what it is. They got the something boxed out there on the front. Wow, I think we have 5 or 6 of these locomotives going through Bluffton. This is the middle of the war. Dr. Travis would, I've had first-hand reports that he would leave patients in the examining rooms, and he'd run out the back door and get pictures and film. And the nurse would have to cover for him. And of course, really, as far as the people in the examining room, as far as they knew, maybe he was off in another examining room. But in any event, he was off doing this. Nickel plate 718, this is one of the early Lima built Berkshire's on nickel plate. And we're still in wartime here. Yeah, it's not a clean job. Bluffton Depot there in the background. There's Bluffton Depot multiple times. It's since been moved. It's in the city park there, west of 25/8, north end of town. This is a 743. It's brand new. I think it is actually. We'll see if the engine cap number shows. This is 743. It's brand new. Yeah. So it's heading up to Fostoria, and then it'll be utilized, 742, excuse me. It'll be utilized on the main line, Chicago to Cleveland to Buffalo. See the builder's plate? The diamond builder's plate is painted right here. So we try to emulate that when the nickel plate 765 was. That's the way it's built with that bar tender. It only lasted about 2 years. After the war, they had a chance to get caught up, and he changed it. But that order all came out like that. It's running light for some reason. This, I think, I'll depend on locals to speak up here. This is in Bluffton. On the nickel plate, they had a wreck, and at the very end, you'll see the nickel plate big hook. It's used re-rail.
They have one on the ACNY, went right through the depot.
Okay. Yeah, on this film here, if anybody has anything to add, if you know something or want to fill in blank, speak up. You guys do it right away. Don't want to stop the film, we can, but that's going to cut into the time for.
I don't know if you heard Denny, but that's where the ACNY and it ran through the depot, and they built a new depot after that.
Yeah.
The one that's on Main Street
Yeah,
right
okay,
now.
all right. So they moved it a little ways from the nickel plate. Yeah, this is a steam-powered hook.
Those are actually incredibly silent, except when they're working. Virtually no noise. I remember them.
I guess that was the depot, right, Dan? I guess that was the depot. I got clobbered. Yeah, okay, now, if you don't have any doubts about being Bluffton, you look at the distance, and I think that confirms it. Oh, another new one going through. 1630, this is December 44. No correction, October 44. The nickel plate 765 that runs in Fort Wayne was built just a month earlier. This is the only one in the films. This is a nickel plate Mikado, a 600 series Mikado. Yeah, he's got one zoom lens there. Well, you notice World War II, and there's German submarines lurking off the coast. And so all the oil had to get transferred to tankers. Now, I do not know why, but we're down in Kentucky or Tennessee here. This is Louisville National Railroad, one of their early passenger diesels. Here's a couple element things here in the next couple scenes. Pretty respectable long passenger train here, but you notice there's two troop sleepers there in the second and third positions from the Louisville National Mikado. No, it's not Lima. And here we go with some more of those newfangled diesels. This paint scheme's a little different than the one that was just on a minute ago. Mail car, straight baggage car, anchored coaches here. Then we're back here to heavyweight Pullman's back here in the back, sleeping cars. Probably had the diner sneak through there somewhere. This probably is the most interesting of the L&N films. I'm going to have to track this down and find out about this diesel. This is an early freight diesel. Here we have a C&O passenger train behind diesel. And these are the new cars that were built in 1950. Nickel plate box, identical cars at the same time. These are Pullman standard built cars. They got stainless steel fluting on the outside, but they're actually carbon steel. Here's a couple Southern ROF units. They dieselized early. They were pretty much dieselized, I think, about 50, very early 50s, like 52, right at that time frame. We'll see this trestle again. Of course, this was their rat hole line that went from Cincinnati to Chattanooga. And over a period of decades, they straightened it out and eliminated a lot of the tunnels. And boy, is that a hurt house. Look down at it. Okay, Benzene. This is their Streamline T1 locomotives, and this is in downtown Fort Wayne. Benzene shops are right there behind. And there's several shots here of the T1s over here. There's a brand new one. It's under construction. It's about half done. All these were originals. There were 52 of them. They were all cut out and scrapped in the 1950s. And there's some determined folks who are building a full-size reproduction. That's what it's half done. These are both the Streamline T1 locomotives. They're about 110 feet long. I think the locomotive alone weighs as much or more than the 779 does out in Lincoln Park. And they would fly. They would run as far as high as 120 mile an hour, 125 mile an hour.
They were also slippery.
They were slippery to get started, but boy, once they got going.
I've seen pictures of slipping at 60 miles an hour in the front ones.
Yeah. Okay, now we seem to be in Chicago here. Here comes the Chicago Northwestern with one unit train. We got one car fit match. That's a heavyweight pull. Here's a different paint scheme. Pretty long train. And we're on the upside of 1950 this side. It's interesting. Near as I can tell, all these films are in chronological order they were taken. Okay, I haven't found anything yet that doesn't fit in the chronological sequence. By the way, the other 28 reels are all family stuff, okay? So, and I didn't get a hold of those. Okay, here we jump now to the double-headed nickel plate Berkshires. This is running from Lima to Bluffton, or maybe it might be over north of Bluffton too. I have reason to believe John Keller called B.W. Travis and said, because the line through Bluffton had been dieselized for a year or more, but there were still some operable steam engines over in Frankfort, Indiana and Roundhouse. The nickel plate wanted to move them east and then use them in eastern Ohio on the coal lines. And I suspect, I have a clipping from St. Mary's newspaper. He called the local newspaper to come get a picture of these two engines dead through when everything else in the rear was diesel. They ran them light, well, he worked on the front of the train up to Bellevue, and then they gave new assignments. So they got relocated from the Frankfurt, Muncie areas.
He's driving his car, and I don't remember his son or daughter was taking the picture. He's in his car, right beside the train as it was going.
These are Super 8 movies, okay? If they were a little clearer, if I could get a number off of one of those two locomotives, I could match it up with, I do have a newspaper account from St. Mary's in 1956 when they ran those two through there. I think that's what they were doing. And you just know the crew said, well, hot dog, boy. If this is going to be it, this is the last time we're going to steam engine on this railroad, we're going to lay the smoke. I just don't have any doubt that that's what happened. So if it is, that's the only thing in this film that doesn't fit the perfect chronology. Okay, there's a nice shot of Bluffton. This will be southbound. Please, locals, speak up if I got any of it wrong.
John Jr.'s here, he'd probably tell you who called him. John Keller Jr.
Correct. All this stuff is, right now, we're talking, this is 1956, 55, 56. We're 70 years later.
Is this still Bluffton?
Yeah. This is southbound. Freight house is still there on the east side. Originally, it was a combination station with freight and passenger. Really, business got so good at one point, they built a new passenger depot on the north side. And that's the one that saved out the city.
That's the power station.
In there. Is this South Bluffton? Like, verify that. Might be the Northward Corridor in Boston. I have no doubt that it's in that area. Every day. Every day. least one of these scenes in here where they have every bit of 60 mile an hour, right through town. This is not it.
Other trucks, these quite a bit years ago.
It's no surprise, the sun's in the south. So he filmed, mostly he filmed trains going south.
That we at least.
Dr. Travis, he was a well-known model railroader. He actually built model railroad equipment, including a lot of electrical controls. He sold those. He was featured in Model Railroader magazine and other toy train magazines. Fred has kept Dr. Travis's layout, which came up out of the basement some years ago. Fred keeps that thing preserved. And hopes that maybe someday it might get put back together. So he kept everything that goes with it.
Wayne, during
Yes.
Christmas, Dr. Travis would open up the doors and all of us kids would go and see the train. Every Christmas.
Somebody here was telling me about, they were one of those kids.
I was.
You? Okay, we've got more. All right.
Oh, yeah. He had one of the first round tables railroad in the house. He made it.
I always was curious that a doctor, by the way, he was the doctor for the nickel plate. They would hire a doctor in every community of any size. They called him a surgeon, or a company surgeon. And you go back in the old nickel plate rule books and timetables, and it's listed every town on the system. B.W. Travis is listed as the company physician, which meant he got an annual pass. And he could take his family on other railroads with that annual pass. It really wasn't just a family doc. He was considered one of the better surgeons in the area. Okay, I think we got this is the southbound, and this is the ACMY track in the foreground. Seven to 11. That's where the Alco built locomotives. This was not a Lima mill. The Lima didn't start building until 715 was the first number of the. The extra headlights at the top there, they call it Mars light. It was a safety thing. It would help make sure people would notice the train coming at a grade crossing. Nickel plate instituted at about 1950 and 51. So if you think about it, the pictures you saw earlier was a single headlight. And in the later ones after 1950 and 51, we had the Mars light. Now the freight cars have changed a lot in the last 70 years. Most of these cars are no more than 40 foot long. A lot of them are 40-foot box cars. Now there's 85-foot box cars and longer cars of all sorts. And he's waving at us. I assume that's the ACMY interchange north of Bluffton, and he's heading north. Looks like we got a double header here.
Travis when he showed his model railroads to the kids. It filled 2/3 of the basement, and somebody would usually ask, how much did this cost? And being a doctor, his answer was, I never smoked a cigarette in my life, but if I did, I would have spent more money on the cigarettes than I spend on these trains.
Them days.
A very diplomatic way of.
Yeah.
Okay, this car's, setting some cars down there on the interchange track for the ACNY route. ACNY was a glorified short line railroad that went from Delphus, Ohio, through Bluffton, over to the Akron area. So the eastern end of it was very industrialized. West end, it's out here in the cornfields, was not, it's a lot more rural and grain traffic and that kind of stuff. And nobody asked, but I have a letter from ACNY Stationery. They returned the tickets to somebody. Somebody that rode their last passenger train on August 1st, 1951, wanted to get a souvenir ticket from that last train. And here, the railroad sent it to him with his cover letter, dated August 1st, 1951. Which is my day in history. So. There's a few B&O, Baltimore, Ohio things. Most of these are taken up at Deshler, Ohio. I don't know where that is. They stayed with steam about as long as the nickel plate. And they raised the last of them was from Willard, Ohio, to Garrett, Indiana, to Chicago. And they were pretty much the same size as the nickel plate Berkshires. It was a slightly different wheel arrangement, but the overall size was in that same range. So this is coming out of the Willard yard, westbound. And I'm going to give you a heads up before we get to it. There was a crossing with the Pennsylvania River west of Willard, Attica Junction. And the Pennsylvania, they ran short of power in about 1956. So they leased about a dozen big steam engines from the Santa Fe Railroad. And they had agreed that they would repair them if the Santa Fe ever decided to put it back into service. So you'll see those come along here. They have to be 20% heavier than these locomotives or even the nickel plate 700s. It was only the summer of 1956, and they'll be coming up here in just a few months. Tom Miller back there, he lives right on this line west of Willard. And there's train what, every 20 minutes? Tom? Yeah. There's a train every 20 minutes. I mean, they concentrated a couple routes to get all the traffic they could on that line in Willard. Heavy. So this is the same route. It's west of Willard, all the way to Chicago.
Lima, Ohio, in the early days, 37 trains went through Lima, the locomotives, every day. Imagine we
Yeah.
Wayne, I believe the B&O, when they were going west out of Willard, that double track was all laid about 1851.
Okay, that was the Santa Fe, well, the Santa Fe locomotives. It's, as far as wheel arrangements goes, it was a 210 pole. And the drag wheels were 74 inches tall, which is 5 inches higher than what a nickel plate Berkshire had. They were just monstrous locomotives built for long distances out west. They burned no oil. They were not culverts, they were oil booms. And so we're switching back here to lower it again, and then we'll go back to Attica. See the dock could go to Attica, and he could get trains on 2 railroads. As a train goes by, a top signal, semaphore blade will drop. So anybody, any train that follows them stops. Okay, here we go, one of the sand page. This was a great lark when this happened. Totally unexpected that locomotives would come from Kansas City to be leased and used on these ore trains going up to Sandusky. And they kept putting these on the ground. They would say they were so heavy, they were longer wheelbase, and they would derail a lot in this tracks and switches. And this is Bellevue, Ohio, and this is southbound, getting ready, when the track curves west, there's a Fort Lake. That hold on, I stay correct. That's the depot belt. So this is just east and down there. The lay of the trees and the houses is almost the same. Okay, we got one refrigerator car. And that's a Wheeling and Lake Erie 800 series engine. Very close to the nickel plate Berkshire, very close. But they weren't built in London. That's a nickel plate switch engine. We're just about the end of this one. And see that white steam going up? That's the safety valve. Fireman's got motor full steam, we're at maximum pressure. Thinking enough?
Of course.
Okay, these are called the soaking furnaces. This is where they heated up the steel shapes before they moved them over and put them underneath the steam hammer. Stand by. The ground was going to shake. It really did. So it's white hot. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. I think these are in the range of 1,000 ton. Look at it, it's all done by eye. The operator is off to the right. You see the bar? Okay, he's controlling it. And that guy, one of those guys, and there was only a handful of people who did this. We had a tour out there at the Locomotive Works after all the equipment was sold and auctioned off. But we kept the nickel plate engine there 2 winters in a row. And Bob Keller, who you'll see later in the film, he worked there. And he said there was, one of the operators had been in John Philip Sousa's band. And he was a show-off. So he would obviously you could guess it, they would have visitors come through and he wanted to impress them. So he said, well, give me your watch. So he put his watch right there on the anvil. And then he would just come down and he would stop. And then he'd hand the watch back. So he was a show-off, okay? And he could control it that well. Yeah, this is going to be a side rod or main rod. And you notice we've got a dog leg in it, but it runs back through both directions. And okay, this is the grain, so the graining operation. Obviously, that's the side rod on the locomotive. you look at those, on the 765 or the 779 in Lincoln Park, and you look at them, and you cannot believe that they did this with hand tools, because it seems like there should be all kind of irregularities. And he was perfect. It was perfect. Okay, this is a wheel lay. Get graded. He's turning the axle. In the center. Okay. The axle, it's got holes, oval holes in it, okay? And then there's a steel tire that goes around this. This is a fairly small diameter. You still hear me okay back there?
Yep.
Charles? Looks like Larry Zerler walked in.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you well.
Okay. So the mark of a good machinist and a good sharp tool is that you get a long cut, right? You get a long piece will peel off. Okay, now it's firebox. The boiler tubes go to those big holes. And I got the torch working up above him, and the sparks are flying down right in his collar here. Now you're going to see this film again. At least part of it. You're going to see parts of this film again. American House did a couple of interviews later, and they snipped some of this and put it in. So you can get to see some of this again. This is not a big locomotive. This looks like a switch engine to me, but I'm not sure what order it is. Now, this is the boiler shop. This is a separate building from the erecting hall. Okay? But here they go. They lace it together and sails through the air. This is a little one, probably no more than 100 tons. Okay. This is the eye popper. This is the test track at Lima. It comes south, and then it curves to the west. And they tested out brand new locomotives. And it scares me on that industrial track how fast they're going. I mean, I really can't believe it. And you can see that it doesn't have all the insulation on it, it doesn't have all the jack on it yet, but they're testing out the mechanics. So this is a 1939. 1939. Making
AC9,
adjustments.
Wayne.
What's that?
The AC9, Southern Pacific AC9.
Right. And this is a coal burner, so it's got the tender, the cab, and the usual locations. Okay, now here's the finished version of the same thing. Got the test track, all the jacking's on, it's got a skyline casing on the top, kind of a streamlined thing. No idea that this exists. The background, by the way, is the switch engine on the B&O South Main Street. So this is where they come around the curve, and they'll head straight north to the, close to the wrecking hall. They built 10 of these engines for use out in California and Oregon. And you'll see pretty quick, they had an open house here. This was a big deal because coming out of the Depression, getting an order like this, this is the second biggest locomotive I've ever built. Got an airport. Yes, it's right, Southern Pacific like the other ones, in addition to the steam whistle. That building, Tom, you see the peak? That's building 13, that was the Superior shop. It was in much better shape than anything else. So when the original erecting hall was demolished along with all the other buildings, that one building for 13 stood there for like another 8 or 10 years. And finally they decided we weren't going to do anything with it. I guess I don't need to point out the clothing. I mean, look how people are dressed. I mean, this is suit, ties, dresses. Yeah, there's that building 13. And a lot of the builders' photographs for the Lima locomotives, that's the background. It's right behind it, and there's a big electrical substation right next to it. You'll see that many from that. Good up running boards, all like that.
it's a big deal, and they invited the general public to come out and see the locomotive.
That's right, Scott. You bet. You snuck in late. I didn't realize.
He's better.
Yeah, they only ever did a couple open houses. Several of them. I don't think it's more than one handful. Yeah, this would not be a good place to bring the general public in. We're back down that test track again.
That's what you were telling us about?
Yeah, right. Okay, now, these films are patched together. This is 1936, when the daylight locomotive was completed, right? Unlike Dr. Travis, these films, they're put together out of order. Cigar was the plant manager, and I got his name written down somewhere. And he's always got that stogie. And he's in the picture when it was brought from the Locomotive Works up here originally. They used Lima cranes and that same plant manager was stogie. I've been trying to match some of these up. There was a minor banquet up at Argonne Hotel in the 1940s, but it took pictures of people at every table, and it's got their names underneath. So I've used that to match up some of the faces with the names. Not done with that yet. Yeah, that's the completed daylight locomotive, which was red and orange.
Orange, silver.
And there was about another 40 or 50 locomotives like this built later.
Was this the American Freedom Train, or was it one like it?
It was the later one.
Later one?
Later, yes. Essentially the same design. There's that plant manager with the stogie.
What number was that daylight?
4410 series. Forget the exact number. Okay, Lima, they kept one of their own shades that they built and used it for switching in the plant. In one of these scenes you can see, well, there was being okay, now, don't forget, Lima also built shovels and cranes. Here's a piece of film that should have been thrown away. When it was, as soon as it was filmed, it should have been thrown away. You'll see why in a moment. You're going to pick up about a 150-ton locomotive with Lima's biggest crane. This is during the war. This is January 1944. For the locomotive, I could check the builder's roster and figure it out. This was January 1944.
Wayne only built 2 of those 1,600.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that.
He went to West Coast for shipping.
It must be Bernie back there. Okay, now here's the interesting part. Hold up your seats. Those 5.5 foot tall ants around here, they're not making much. You finally got to slow down. I fell over. I couldn't believe they actually used this film. I thought the safety people would have said, "Oh, we got to reenact this. Do this a second time. Get it lifted up properly."
Look out.
This was one of the U.S. Army locomotives. There was hundreds of them built during the war, and then there was a bunch of them, a couple hundred of them for France right after the end of the war, because their whole railroad system was decimated.
Oh, yeah.
got a kick out of that, and lifting, okay? Obviously they put a bracket at the front end, and then back here this, they took the steam dome cover off, because it's got a 25 or 30 bolts, yeah, studs that stick up. And they made this thing sit there to lift. And of course, whenever it finally got this on the ship or got to Europe or wherever it went, then they would take it off, put the steamboat cover back on. I think they're just showing off.
Oh, okay.
Wayne, did you hear that?
What's that?
That 1600 crane was the beginning of the 2400 crane.
Okay.
That's where it came from.
Now, these films here, we're looking at this. We're here in the museum, in the back room. Okay. A lot of them were not identified. Some were misidentified. Others were poorly identified. So I took a 16mm projector, and Charles and I, Charles Bates is the railroad curator, we ran every film that there was down there, just to be sure. It might have only been the beginning of something else, but we wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything. I figured that this was probably the opportunity to get this stuff digitized, whatever was worth saving. So we tried to get every railroad and locomotive film we could find that was of any use. And I think those are the rings that sit on the turntable of the crane with all of the gearing on it. And you see the Lima Miller's plate, diamond shaped Miller's plate right there in the front? Right on the frame. Yeah, I would say that this is the, I think we had the B&O main lines there in the background, which is still a very busy piece of railroad. Okay, now they're going to try to get back on lanes, right? It's a little different than re-railing a line held.
High quality film.
Yes, it is. Excellent film. Yeah, obviously they called in an outside firm to get this film. And I can make no apologies. I mean, the film is what we got. Okay, that's everything that we can find here, railroad or locomotive related. Some of it's sharp like this, and others it's kind of muddy because it's 8mm. All over the road map. Just trying to preserve and offer what still exists. It's been a long time. Now, there's a company picnic. There's actually 2 stretches of film of a company picnic. I'm going to fast forward through that when we get there. I couldn't identify anybody. I was telling you about that one little book of the banquet down at the Argonne Hotel. And I was looking for the Will Woodwards, the plant manager, and Bert Townsend, and all the key players. And I can't find them. Okay, I can't find anybody like that. Yeah, these all went to the coast and were exported. Okay, here comes the shop switcher. Charles, was it 1 or 2 shays they kept for switching the yard? So I kind of thought it was 2.
This was a former New York Central stage who stuck in New York City.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you, Scott. Scott's done some books on the Lima Locomotive Works and also the DT&I Railroad in Western Ohio. Okay, so we're showing off. Let's go ahead and list some of the cranes too. The balance blade. don't know, we might shorten some of this film right here. It's repetitive, it's kind of long, but we haven't got to decide that yet. But there is 2 interviews that the American House organization did. One was a former employee named Hitchcock, and the other was former employee Bob Keller. And those are much newer, those are filmed in the 80s. And they're both real good, and so we're going to run those after we get done with the picnics. And then we also have some lengthy footage on shovels testing in the backyard and moving mud around.
Weighing that 34 shovel, that thing I was lifting right there, might have gone over thousands of those.
Over 1,000?
Over 1,000, 3,000.
I knew it was a popular model. It was a good all-around, all-purpose.
Those shovels, diesel or gasoline?
Bernie? Gasoline or diesel?
Those are diesel.
The shovels were?
Yes, no. But they made them electric or gas, whatever you want, but most of them are diesel or electric.
Okay. Lima got into the shovel and crane business in the 20s.
1928.
Thank you. They got in the shovel and crane business in 1928. They had some people or some interest from Marion, Ohio, where shovels and cranes were built. And so they set up this division, and it outlived the rest of the locomotive business by 20, almost 30 years. Almost 30 years. We're getting progression of time here. How are we doing on time? What's the time right now?
We're out of time. Yeah, sorry guys, we're out of time.
He already watched, he watched.
I'll have an easier time.
We're passing into about 38 minutes. 38. This is a little bit of that company picnic. Yes. Look at that. Picnic in the summer. And they got full suits, ties, coats, hats.
That's when they were proud of where they were.
What's that?
That was when they were proud of where they were.
What's your head over there?
Oh, my God.
I'm pretty much a locomotive guy in trains, but this is kind of interesting.
Oh,
You're just gonna have to do this again, Wayne.
Absolutely.
Yeah, part 2.
I hate to say this,
This is
but
wonderful.
we might, because there's other stuff to follow.
What was the time frame, Wayne, say a typical Berkshire, from start to finish, how long did it take?
Scott Drossel, you want to answer that?
Mark the date and time, he doesn't know.
As I recall from your book, Scott, it was about a month, I think. About a month. They start off in the boiler shop. They build the boiler, put it on dolly wheels, and then they'd roll it over to the wrecking hall. In the meantime, all the other components have been gathered up, brought in, some of them brought from outside vendors, and then they put it all together in the wrecking hall.
I can lock you
How
all
many
in
of you
there.
would be willing to, how many want to stick around tonight to get it all? No, that's
You
not
are
enough.
paid by.
Okay, how about
It's not a democracy.
No,
another?
I'm sorry.
Well, my wife is signaling me, so, okay. All right, well, then, maybe we should adjourn to another,
The girls have got a long day here, Joss, so
okay.
behave yourself.
Maybe we should.
No,
It's not,
My
it's not so
favorite.
much, it's not so much that, it's that if we give you an hour and a half, then we have to give somebody else an hour and a half, and then somebody else an hour and a half.
But they don't have anything to say.
They might.
Hey, this is going on YouTube, guys. So,
Yeah.
and the world will know.
That's not our fault.
And if he has a lot more stuff, then we'll just have to have a second one, right?
Amen. Part 2.
So a couple things that I do want to tell you before, now that I have your attention, is